good afternoon, folks. Welcome to this afternoon's presentation. I think we'll get started. We're about on time, so I don't think there's going to be any other joiners. So, first of all, my name is Jarrett Palmer. I'm the Operations Director for CPhI Pharmaceuticals, so very proud to be talking to you this afternoon. The subject that I'm going to talk to you about is a subject that's probably well known to everybody. It's a topic of conversation across the industry, serialization. The one thing I will tell you is this presentation isn't going to be a technical presentation on how to do serialization. So that is the first thing that I will say. So really what I'm going to talk about today is essentially in the CDMO space. So CPhI is a contract manufacturing business in the healthcare space, and I'm sure we're not faced with any other challenges as anybody else is in the industry. And one of the hardest jobs I've had is to answer this question to our executive team, our board of directors, around, is there a choice? Okay, I'm sure you've been faced with the same question. So, is there a choice? There is a choice. I guess the way I see it and the way our company sees it is, after much convincing to our executive team, it's like a ticket to the game. You're either in it, and if you've got a ticket, you can come into the game, or you're not, unfortunately. I think that's pretty much known now to everybody. There's a lot more knowledge about this topic in the industry. It's a legislation requirement, and it's a game changer. So I just want to reflect on some statistics. So I did a bit of research into the industry and been looking at what everybody else is doing around the industry. And there's some interesting facts. So in 2014, there was a survey done. And the interesting fact is that in terms of the market, what is everybody doing? So one of the things I found quite interesting was that 27% of the people who took part in this survey either haven't started looking at serialization yet, are in the early planning phases of serialization, or are looking for solutions. In my opinion, 53% of the respondents are probably already too late. And I think that may come as a surprise. I'm hoping that many of the people in this room aren't in that 53%. So I think, looking at sort of where we are as a business and looking at what's happening in the industry, looking at the things that are driven by market requirements and legislation, it was really important for us as a business to really look around and see what everybody else is doing, look at the timelines. It's very much timeline driven, this subject, and just to try and understand sort of how do we cater for the market requirements, how do we cater for what our customers need, and not just what our customers need, but what the regulators expect. So what is the solution? I guess the hardest thing I had to do was to convince our executive team that as a business with multiple packaging operations that had to be compliant with serialization, the first question I was asked was, well, is there a simple solution, and can we just use that solution and replicate it across every one of our sites? I guess in contract manufacturing, one of the difficulties and challenges that we have is that our customers want different things, and we're at the mercy of what our customers want. So no, there isn't one solution, unfortunately. There's many solutions, which is also great because it gives you at least some choice around how do you implement a solution. So the other thing that I was looking at was within serialization, there's a number of people who are looking to just take the big bang approach and really put full capability in place across all of their packaging operations and offer a full service to the customer base in terms of capabilities and serialization. I think whether you go for the full big bang approach or whether you take a phased approach depending on which markets come in line with the legislation change, there's always going to be operational challenges. And the way I see it is there's three essential operational challenges. There's a time issue, and this is very much time driven. We know that, right? There's legislation that's coming in force all the time. There's a cost issue, and I think as a CDMO, that's one of the things that is at the forefront of our mind, and we're going to come on to that in a second. And then there's the know-how, so the knowledge, and this was something that we had to do a lot of research on, working with our customers, working with our suppliers, and working with our internal assets to try and understand how do we take internal assets and provide capabilities to suit our customers and our market's needs. So I guess the big dilemma, and the big dilemma is the commercial aspect. Okay. So what is the commercial dilemma? The commercial dilemma is really, how do you fund this? It's not cheap. We know that it's a requirement. It's a ticket to the game, so you don't really have a choice. So you're faced with, how do you fund this operation and this exercise? And one of the things that we started to look at is, well, what is the typical ballpark in terms of funding for implementing a solution for serialization? And one of the things that we found was that there's a broad range of offerings out there. As you walk around CPhI, you'll find many solution providers that are offering different solutions for serialization, and it ranges from sort of 100,000 per line or per solution right up to the millions, and it depends on how much integration you want to do, how much capability you want to offer your customers in terms of the bare minimum, in terms of what's required now, or whether you want to go and implement a full track and trace solution. I guess the interesting thing was, it was around the survey that I looked at, and that was looking at how many people are anticipating what's going to happen in the future. And that anticipation, we're going through those same thought processes. So do we really go for the full serialization capability offering now across all of our operations, or do we just take it in a phased approach? And I think the interesting thing is if you look at the data, it's only a very small percentage of companies who are actually looking to go for the full Big Bang approach and be fully serialized within the next 6 to 12 months. So I guess there's almost a waiting game there to see what happens, to see how this evolves. The interesting thing was, there's a biggest portion of the respondents in the data that I looked at were looking to put some serialization in, but on an as and when and needs basis. So what is the operational challenge? And I think, if you look at the biggest portion of what the data is telling us, the biggest portion of what operational challenges people are facing is taking existing assets and putting in serialization solutions. And I think you probably are faced with the same things. If you have packaging operations in your business right now, you're probably asking yourself the same question. How do we receive the data? How do we interface it using an ERP system with our business? How do we then take that data and apply that data on a packaging operation, on an asset that may be 10 years old, maybe 15 years old, maybe more than 15 years old? And that whole integration process and that whole utilization of existing assets is really probably the biggest operational challenge. And I think that's why, when you look at what people are doing in the industry, there isn't one single solution. There's many solutions, and it depends on how you can integrate it onto existing assets and existing operational processes. So just to summarize this subject, I think the greatest concern that we have is in the CDMO space. And the reason I wanted to do this presentation was to really get it out and talk about this subject. It's a tough subject. Everybody knows that it's a game changer. I said that at the start. The cost element is a question mark. How much does it cost? How do you fund it? Who funds it? Those are the questions I got asked by the members of our board within ASICA. How do we keep the speed of manufacturing going? So one of the learnings that we had in the early phases of introducing serialization was, we measure operational equipment effectiveness, as I'm sure many of you do in your businesses. And one of the things that we could not afford to do was to drop our overall efficiency on our packaging lines. And it's really hard when you start to integrate new solutions like serialization to maintain that same level of efficiency on your packaging operation. And then the knowledge and the know-how. So the knowledge and know-how comes from many sources, and there's lots of solution providers out there. As I said, there's lots of ways of doing serialization, but the knowledge and know-how in terms of your own business environment, your own assets, and how you roll out that solution is really critical. And then changing process. So there's a number of, we live in a very heavily regulated industry. So how you map out those changes and how you control those changes, super, super important. And we've tried to take a fairly standard approach in terms of how we make the change and how we roll those changes out. And then the cost of training. So this isn't to be underestimated. I think a number of people that I've spoken to in the industry think it's a pretty simple solution. You put you receive some serialized code, you basically put it onto a box and you track that data and you provide that data back to the customer or the market. The training shouldn't be underestimated. And then, of course, all the varying different requirements from the customers. And whether we like it or not, in a CDMO space, we have lots of customers and everybody has their own needs. So trying to cater for that is super important and one of the biggest challenges, actually, I think, for us.